Coming to you from the Hudson Media Group studio, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. Hope you all had a wonderful week. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Folks, yes, Election Day has come and gone, and while many of us are exhausted from staying up watching results that we haven't gotten yet, and who knows if we'll ever find out in the immediate future who exactly won the presidency. But here in the Garden State, aside from voting for president, for a U.S. Senate seat, and all the congressional seats throughout New Jersey, ballot questions were also on everyone's mind. And of course, the one that led the charge was ballot question number 1, where overwhelmingly here in New Jersey, by a margin of 67% to 33%, marijuana is now legalized for anyone 21 and over. Now here's some details again via the Associated Press. Now New Jersey became the 12th state in the country to legalize marijuana for recreational purposes. Now the ballot question was approved by all voters in 21 counties leading up to Election Day. Now, Governor Murphy declared victory as he said, quote, "We did it, New Jersey. We legalized adult-use marijuana and passed it overwhelmingly. A huge step forward for racial and social justice as well as for our economy." Now, before we get all, worked up into a frenzy of, and get all jubilant about it, let me put this into context here because there's still a lot to sort of unravel. Now, again, it was an overwhelming margin. No one should really be surprised, folks. I think we've seen public opinion polls in recent years have clearly demonstrated that most Americans, by a large margin, have approved of recreational marijuana usage. Now, let me just give you full disclosure here because, it's something that I pride myself on this program. I've never smoked marijuana. I don't care to. It's not something that really interests me, okay? When I come home from work or I'm relaxing at home on a rainy, summer or winter evening, you know what? I love a good glass of red wine, whether it be Malbec, a Cabernet, or even a Merlot. Now, if you like to smoke marijuana in your own home, that's your business. When it comes to, inviting a girl over for Fernando and chill, whatever, hey, I like to have wine. To each his own. What I've not really been a fan of, and it's been very apparent here in New Jersey for decades, and this is something that, listen, I can speak from a point of experience because before I entered academia, I worked in our criminal justice system for 10 years. I worked in the judiciary, and I also worked for the Office of the Public Defender. And in my time during that decade of work with New Jersey government, specifically within our criminal justice system, I saw firsthand how antiquated our drug laws were. I saw black and brown people overwhelmingly being incarcerated for years at our local county jails for having the most even minimal amount of marijuana on them. Now, once again, the fact that marijuana has now been legalized doesn't mean you just go sort of walk out on the street in your local neighborhood or on your block or just be smoking marijuana on your porch. It doesn't work that way, folks. Now it's going to be up to the legislature to sit down and sort of iron out the details. Now, what we've seen in the last couple of years have been some very helpful and what I would argue have been very insightful decriminalization bills. One being co-sponsored by our very own state senator here in North Hudson, Senator Cunningham out of the 31st Legislative District. We've also seen Ronald Rice, a Democrat, also a state senator out of Essex County, working together with State Senator Cunningham on looking sort of to iron out the details about decriminalization. But we knew that back in the summer of 2017, then candidate Phil Murphy was adamant about one of the biggest things on his agenda, should he take office, was to legalize marijuana here for recreational purposes. Now, it never happened. If you all remember, throughout 2018, it took a full calendar year, even for the legislature and Governor Murphy, to come to an agreement when it came to raising the minimum wage to $15. And even then, folks, it's still going to be in small incremental increases leading up to the eventual $15 in, guess what, 2024. So we're still years away from ever seeing the minimum wage being raised to what will help many New Jerseyans. And for the last 2 years as well, under Governor Murphy's administration, both him and the legislature have been at odds about how to properly look at marijuana. Now, as we saw in March of 2019, there was a vote actually on both chambers of the legislature, both within the state assembly and the state senate, to see if we could just legalize it legislatively. And of course, with the legislature being controlled by Democrats in Trenton, many of them didn't want to take a stand. And of course, ultimately, the measure came up many votes short. State Senate President Steve Sweeney went on record saying, you know what, we'll have to put this on the ballot. Now, it should have been on last year, where there were legislative races up and down, but again, the legislature felt that having it in November of 2020, not knowing what would sort of be happening during this year, would be a better measure. Now, listen, I think we all know that whether it was in 2019 or 2020, it was going to pass overwhelmingly. But now comes the hard work. Now it comes time for the men and women in the legislature to roll up their sleeves and to get to work. Because the biggest fear that many of us have, including myself, because I've talked about it on this program repeatedly, is I don't trust Trenton when it comes to budgeting, when it comes to spending and sort of, taxing us accordingly as far as I can throw them. I barely trust them to run a hot dog stand. And listen, obviously, if many of them ran their homes the way they run the state, they'd pretty much all be homeless in the legislature. But luckily, it's nice when you get to play with other people's money. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen here when it comes to marijuana. Folks, listen, we know there's a black market for it. We know that many of you at home who enjoy smoking it will continue to seek out those in the black market that provide it at an affordable price. But very much like alcohol and tobacco, if Trenton doesn't really get their heads together and they tax it overwhelmingly, what incentive does anybody have, for many of you at home watching this, to go, to your local corner, to go text someone and get it through your normal hookup? It's not going to be, incentivized. So my plea to Governor Murphy and the Democrats in the legislature, because it's ultimately up to them, folks. So they're the ones that run the legislature, and they've been doing so for almost a quarter of a century now. Get it together, tax it accordingly, regulate it accordingly. If you tax it up the wazoo, guess what? People aren't going to want to buy it. And as purified as it'll be, and as regulated as it'll be, people in New Jersey will not want to spend their hard-earned dollars on something that, quite frankly, is going to be as expensive as alcohol and tobacco, respectively. So again, Governor Murphy, State Senate President Steve Sweeney, and Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin work together for the betterment of New Jersey residents and, more importantly, taxpayers. I know that's not really in your interest because we've seen it with recent state budgets in the way that you tax, and spend. But when it comes to marijuana, let's get this right, because when it comes to everything else, whether it's raising tolls on the Parkway and the Turnpike and even the Atlantic City Expressway, or whether it comes to spending unnecessarily within the state budget, in which you're allocating money to ridiculous feel-good projects like helping illegals or helping Planned Parenthood, do me a favor. This could potentially be a moneymaker for New Jersey residents, and obviously for the state of New Jersey. Now, as we all know, whenever revenues come in, the legislature spends like drunken sailors. Now, I don't want to put all the blame on Governor Murphy because this problem precedes him. I blame Governor Christie, even Governor Corzine before him. Trenton has to do this properly. And if they will, and if hopefully they do, guess what? New Jerseyans will benefit. A lot of you can go get high as long as you want and wherever you want, and that's fine. That's what you enjoy. God bless you. But more importantly, if it produces a revenue stream that the state will use responsibly to fund, let's say, public schools and other projects, not like, the feel-good projects, but helping our veterans, helping our seniors. If that's what it ultimately will go to, then I'm all for it. Otherwise, all this hoopla might just go up in smoke. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the latest edition of the 4-time award-winning podcast, Talk on the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk on the Hudson, was the publisher of the Hudson County Chronicles, Bruce Alston. Now, he's been a regular on the podcast since its inception in March of 2017. He always has a lot to say, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we discussed the recent win by Ward D Councilman Yusuf Saleh in the special election only a few days ago, and certainly the impact it will have for Mayor Stephen Phillips' ticket going into 2021. Let's check out what he had to say.
In Jersey City, we saw that, and I talked about this a few weeks ago. I don't know if you heard the episode with Councilman Saleh when he was on here, but even with COVID, it seemed like the councilman was able to have a good ground game, getting the vote out. It showed last night. And I talked about it live on the air. Some people may not want to admit this, Bruce, but it was almost a little bit of a temperature check or a barometer of like, all right, how do people feel about Stephen Phillip? Because Stephen put a lot of his chips on the table behind Yusuf, and it seemed like Yusuf won. He did. He'll be an incumbent now. He'll be the 6th incumbent on Mayor Phillips' ticket next year. And I think the mayor's going to be breathing a little relief tonight. What do you think?
I think that like just speaking with the mayor, I think that he was confident that Yusuf would do well. I think he thought Yusuf was a good candidate, even when when he appointed him to the seat. But I think that if you look at it this way, what did Youssef wind up with, about 5,000 votes, I think?
Roughly.
I think he got close to five.
Yeah.
I think he got close to 5,000 votes. I would say it's definitely a temperature check. It definitely it bodes well for Fulop, considering that when you take out that the former councilman Michael Young wasn't part of Team Fulop, right? And consider that the ward kind of flipped that way. You figured there might have been a strong anti-Fulop vote out there, but it's just letting you know that the mayor is hugely popular, or his count hugely popular in the Heights, I would think. I mean,
I agree with you.
His ward, those were his ward people running that campaign. His Democratic Organization chairwoman, Barbara Castellamato, was on the ground. Hats off to David Cruz, who's become who's basically become the ward leader up there. And point simple, they kicked ass. They actually did, and I don't say that. I think your hat's got to go off to a young man like Patrick Ambrosia, because I look at it this way. I mean, he's a kid. He got out there. I mean, his time is coming. And I don't think we've heard the last of this young man, but I think Youssef he's shaping himself up to be that councilman in 2021, definitely. But I do agree with you, though, as I think that it shows that Fulop's definitely strong in the Heights.
Undoubtedly, Ward D Councilman Youssef Saleh is quite the rising star in Jersey City, and of course, it showed on Election Day. Secondly, we discussed the ongoing rumors that are running rampant throughout Jersey City that Hudson County Democratic Organization Chairwoman Amy DeGise could ultimately end up on Mayor Stephen Fulop's ticket in 2021. There's a lot of rumors and innuendo going around, but of course, Bruce Alston shares his insight as to what ultimately will happen on Mayor Fulop's ticket. Let's see what he had to say.
No, absolutely. You love to see that sort of support for a candidate, and it shows about how he's revered. And I think that now with winning the special election, obviously he'll run on the ticket next year. And now, Bruce, it gets me thinking because, on a couple of occasions here, as you know, every month I have the distinguished chairwoman of the HCDO on here, and her name keeps coming. Her name keeps coming up, and Amy and I have a great rapport. And I make it a point to ask tough questions. And in recent episodes, Amy has not deflected. I think Amy has just addressed it where her efforts and her energy was devoted to, last night. And I'm clearly not thinking about next year. I keep hearing those whispers about the mayor wanting to get Amy on the ticket. Conclusively to replace Rolando as a at-large candidate. But my sources tell me that Amy isn't interested. Again, I could be wrong, but my sources just tell me that she's very happy being the chair. She's a very energetic chair, and let's be honest, she's one of the more respected county chairs of the Democratic machine in New Jersey. Look at other counties.
I'll say right now, I have actually, I don't always have the best things to say about the HCDO, but I'll tell you, I'm a fan of it. I'm a fan of Amy DeGise. I think that Amy has a lot of people, I think, thought that she just was going to be an in-name only chairwoman. I think that we've seen that Amy's on the ground. Amy is going to fight to make the Democratic Organization more progressive, right? More inviting to young people and people of color, I think that just by speaking to Amy knows that things need to change, but Amy's also is very, she understands that change and contrition has to take over time. It can't just be radical change. Not when you have an organization that that has some individuals that have been there for so very long, and I think that she's gained a lot of respect. Now, as far as the council seat, I would think it's a great move by the mayor to ask the chairwoman. I think that he would be doing himself a disservice and even being somewhat disrespectful if he didn't have Amy on his short list or was thinking or considering her, right? But I think Amy's going to be very careful on what she wants to do politically. I think that's a smart move for her. It might be in some ways Amy DeGeese doesn't need the city council seat. Maybe the city council needs Amy DeGeese.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
And that's why I say, I think that over the next few years, as people get older, you're going to see Amy's name pop as possibly a successor to her father as a county exec. I mean, being the HCDO chair, when you consider her position, having the ability to manage egos among all the county leaders and the county mayors, right? Kind of the same job that her father has as the county executive. So when I hear people saying,
no, you're right about that.
When I hear people saying Amy being mayor, I'm like, you know what? Amy might be a damn good county exec, because I don't know if a lot of people remember, but the Hudson County executive used to be one of the most powerful positions in the whole of the state of New Jersey. And that kind of did take place during the Bob Januzzi years. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Tom DeGeese, but I think Tom DeGeese has a different style of governing. He was a different type of executive, where he knew that he let the Sackos and the Stacks, and he let the Menendez and them kind of take a lead more in national and state politics, where Bob Januzzi was much more involved in the politics, national and statewide, But I think that when you look at Amy, I think she's the governor. I know she's very respected by the governor. I know that hey, she let people know in the very beginning she wasn't basically how can I say it? I don't think she was with Joe Biden at first. I think she was more of a Elizabeth Warren, I believe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I believe. So Amy's got a bright future ahead for her. That's for sure.
It was a very informative episode with Bruce Alston from the Hudson County Chronicles, which, by the way, you can check out all the excellent journalism he provides on his own website, which is www.hudsoncountychronicles.com. You can listen to the episode between Bruce and I, which lasted for well over an hour, by going to the podcast main page, which is www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson. You can listen to the episode in its entirety from anywhere and anytime from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. These are the exclusives I'll continue to bring you in 2020 and well into 2021. Now, here are some local stories for your consideration. Again, we'll start off in Jersey City, and a shout out to John Highness with the Hudson County View for his report on this story. And in Ward D, ultimately, Councilman Yusuf Saleh won his special election in a blowout fashion to maintain that council seat. Now, for those of you that were not aware, Councilman Saleh notched down 4,846 votes, or essentially 58.2% of the vote, compared to 1,322 votes, or 15.96% of the vote, for Patrick Ambrosi, who ultimately ended up as a second-place finisher, according to the preliminary tallies accumulated by the Hudson County Clerk's Office. Now, campaign manager David Cruz, on behalf of Councilman Saleh, went on to say, quote, "I would like to thank everybody in the Jersey City Heights who came out and voted, as well as everyone from the team who came out and helped campaign to bring him over the threshold. The election for 2021 starts tomorrow." Now, Saleh, who was appointed to the post in April after the untimely death of the late, great Councilman Michael Youn due to complications from COVID-19, ran to finish his term with the full support of Mayor Stephen Fulop. Now, he scored off against 4 opponents this past election day, which included Ambrosi, attorney and activist Cynthia Hadianis, retired firefighter Rafael Torres, and first-time candidate Lenny Lambert. Now, following election night results, Mayor Fulop confirmed that Saleh will be running on his ticket next year, making him the 6th incumbent to join his 2021 re-election ticket. Now, council members currently include Denise Ridley, Mira Prince Array, Jermaine Robinson, Joyce Waterman, and Daniel Rivera have all announced they'll be running with the mayor again at his campaign event, which took place this recent February, well before COVID-19 hit the Garden State. Now, folks, let me just put this in perspective. Number one, congratulations to Councilman Saleh, who's become a regular on the podcast, and I look forward to having him again, hopefully before the end of the year, to discuss his victory. But more so, it sort of reminds us that, a local guy born and raised in Jersey City can go to school, come back home, start raising a family, and can make a difference in his community. I know Yusuf personally, so I don't want to get overly partisan here, but you know what? He's a very good guy. And those in Ward D, and specifically in the Jersey City Heights, are very lucky to have him. He campaigned hard, even during COVID-19, which made it difficult to even go door to door and sort of engage in the traditional campaign mechanism. Whether it was via social media, phone banking, or anything else, Yusuf was on the ground hitting doors, and guess what? Getting to everybody in the Jersey City Heights. So congratulations to Yusef, and hopefully we'll see how it goes for him in 2021 as he will be running on Mayor Fulop's ticket. Now, who will be opposing Mayor Fulop and who will be opposing Yusuf Saleh in Ward D remains to be seen, but it'll definitely be something to watch out for in the weeks and months ahead. Let's move south into Bayonne, where the Together We Can ticket won overwhelmingly on election night. Once again, a shout out to John Hines from the Hudson County View for his report on this story. Now, the Together We Can Bayonne Board of Education slate swept the elections, beating 6 other candidates that included one other incumbent trustee. Now, the team of Board President Maria Vallado, Vice President Christopher Munoz, and David Doc Watson won rather easily, all securing at least 15% of the vote, according to early tallies from the Hudson County Clerk's Office. Vallado led the field with 8,134 votes cast in her favor, or ultimately 16.92%. They were each elected to serve 3-year terms. Now, they had the backing of Bayonne Mayor Jimmy Davis, along with the City Council, which has typically meant that at least 2 candidates from the team will win based on recent memory. Now, Trustee Michael Alonso ran with fellow Bayonne Republicans Michael Stravaca and Charles Shepard under the, quote, Make Bayonne Great Again banner, but failed to catch the same red wave that he did in 2017, 1 year after President Donald Trump was elected. The race was rounded out with former trustee Charles Ryan, running with newcomer Andrew Kim and Dennis Wilbeck Jr., the son of current trustee Dennis Wilbeck Sr., and their team slogan was responsibility, integrity, and care. Now, one of the things, folks, that sort of makes me very jovial about this is, number one, I know Maria Vallado personally, and I also endorsed her when she was on the podcast recently, which again you can listen to at www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk in the Hudson, as I interviewed her recently along with her council members, her slate members for the Bayonne Board of Education ticket. And one of the things that really stood out for me, folks, is how transparent Maria was, how hard she was willing to work for Bayonne parents and for children in the school district. And it overwhelmingly saw on election night that Bayonne voters wanted to give her another 3-year term on the Bayonne Board of Education. So congratulations to the Together We Can ticket, again led by Maria Vallado, a good friend of the show and certainly someone who is very highly respected throughout the community. And certainly we wish her well as she'll serve another 3-year term within the Bayonne Board of Education and ultimately helping the Bayonne School District become better and better going into 2021. Lastly, I want to discuss a story that I mentioned last week and I'll continue discussing for the foreseeable future. And it involves local North Hudson resident Estefania Mesa Venegas. Now, for those of you that are sort of curious about why this story is so important, well, you know what? If you've ever had anyone in the hospital or a family member, neighbor, loved one, whoever, you realize how nerve-wracking it is. And certainly for her family, it's an ongoing saga that, quite frankly, doesn't seem to have an end in sight. Here are some details, though, to give a better perspective of what's going on. Now, again, folks, for those of you that have online access at home and can go to the GoFundMe page, please type in the search button, Help for Estefania. That's Estefani, Help for Estefania. Now, on Sunday night, July 19th of this year, Estefania Mesa Venegas went into the hospital at the Hoboken University Medical Center because she started feeling contractions. Soon after, what should have been the best moment of her life quickly turned into the worst. She went in for an emergency C-section that day, and for unclear reasons, she went into full cardiac arrest. Now, the lack of oxygen to her brain for over 9 minutes has now placed her in a coma. Now, the doctors at the Hoboken University Medical Center believe she may have brain damage. Now, unfortunately, Estefania does not have health insurance currently, and the bills are starting to accumulate for her family. And quite frankly, they're becoming astronomical. Now, the goal of the GoFundMe page is to help raise funds to transfer to a hospital that has the best neurologists and to help Estefania ultimately to give her a fighting chance. She hasn't woken up yet, and certainly my thoughts and prayers are with her and her family as we're all pulling for you and we're hoping that she does wake up soon. Now, we don't know exactly what caused this during her labor, but right now the main concern is helping Estefania recuperate so she has the best possible chance to help raise her beautiful baby girl Emma, who again is right next to her partner Eddie and her family, all praying for her recovery. Certainly on behalf of this program and of course as well as the podcast, we love you, Estefania, and I know for a fact myself, I will continue fighting for you on this program. Now, right now, the goal of the GoFundMe page is $100,000. It currently stands at $59,725. Now, folks, I know that times are tough and many of us are limited because of COVID-19. Some of you are working on a part-time basis and some of you aren't working at all. So I know that having any sort of disposable income may be difficult. But even if it's so much as $5, please consider donating it. It's going to a very good cause, and it's a cause that, quite frankly, should have all of our attention. Folks, there's a lot of unanswered questions that still remain within the Hoboken University Medical Center. Now, I don't want to go after CarePoint Health here because I have some friends there that I trust and within the administration that I know are doing everything they can to help get some sort of clarity and ultimately closure to this story. But folks, there's some sort of negligence here. I'm not a medical doctor, and while I'm a PhD, you know what, as an academic, I think I'm smart enough to sort of comment on this. You know what, there's something that went very, very wrong here when Estefania went into labor and ultimately had contractions and was about to give birth. Now, even leading up to that C-section, why anyone would go without oxygen for 9 minutes or so is absolutely unforgivable. Ultimately, it's inexcusable. Now, many, at least the PR department at the Hoboken University Medical Center, are not talking. Now, I know that Estefania's family and her attorney are fighting this tooth and nail. Now, we haven't seen exactly what the lawsuit will be, but you can rest assured there will be something going on. And notwithstanding, folks, is also an immigration issue as well, because Estefania's mom is an illegal immigrant. Now, while she is married to an American citizen, still, due to immigration laws in recent years, obviously it puts Estefania's mom in a very, very precarious position as she ultimately is facing deportation. So add on top of all of the grief and despair that this family is facing because of Estefania's condition, in which she hasn't woken up yet, but also too is the ongoing immigration issue concerning her mother. Now, certainly, folks, if you wish to help out, certainly you can reach out to this program or reach out to me via social media. But once again, folks, when it comes to this GoFundMe page, again, Help for Estefania, do me a favor. Please consider donating. It is so worthwhile, and it is something that, quite frankly, should scare all of us. At some point in time, perhaps we've all had a family member in the hospital. And when we send someone to the hospital, guess what? We're hoping that the hospital, the staff, the doctors there, in residence, are all doing the best they can to give our family members and our loved ones the best possible medical care that they can get anywhere. And when you see something like this, it just reeks of negligence. It reeks of irresponsibility. Quite frankly, it reeks of just downright, just atrocious behavior. Now, again, I'm all about the presumption of innocence when it comes to corporations, when it comes to people, when it comes to hospitals, anybody. I don't want to convict anybody in the court of public opinion. Let's leave that for a court of law. But right now, it seems like the Hoboken University Medical Center has a lot to answer for. I'll continue to keep you posted on this program, folks, in the coming weeks and months ahead, as we're hoping that Estefania does indeed wake up. She deserves to. Again, what happened to her was unforgivable and inexcusable. We're hoping that her family gets justice and gets answers in the coming weeks and months ahead. We'll keep you posted here, folks, on Talking Politics as to her story. But once again, go to GoFundMe and type in Help for Estefania and do your part to help her family today. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com and www.livestream.com/HMGTV. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group on Facebook and follow it on Instagram and Twitter. You can also check out the 4-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. Episodes are available from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. Always follow me on Instagram and Twitter, folks. Also check out my Facebook for both the program and my own Facebook as well. And never forget, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Talking Politics, right here with the Hudson Media Group. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.